Hello. I think I've nailed down the audio part now, like to make sure that the audio is good. Just gonna move this bottle out of the way. Okay, I'm a bit worried about going onto the interwebs. So let me just do this real quick. Sometimes it's best to just be safe about these things. I'm just gonna Sorry, I'm just looking for something on the internet that is worth watching. Why Russian defenses fail to stop Ukraine invasion? Let's watch that. This is by William Spaniel. Oh, let me move this. So welcome to the stream. Sorry, that was a bit of a weird intro. Welcome to the stream. I've not done a whole lot today. I just focused on. I did a bit of a singing lesson. I just realized the camera's up a bit odd as well. Is that the monitor or is that me or what? I don't know. But yeah, I focused on. I did a bit of writing, but mostly focused on. Focused on doing a bit of singing lessons today. The last couple of days has been quite busy. I went to a family member's wedding, and that meant that I had to be away for a few days, so I didn't really have any time to do any drawing. But I did a lot of writing then. I've been really at it to work on how to direct myself and get portfolios done and whatnot. I've also got a general overall plan to begin the next project on this channel after I've done this drawing one, which is going to be developing some songs. I think I got I got 18 songs that I want to work on. I don't know how many of those will actually make it into the final cut, but I'm gonna work on at least 18 songs. I had about 50 or so that I had ideas for. Some of them was more developed than others. Some of them were basically completely developed, and then others not so much. But I ended up going with those. I just realized how dark it is in here. It's not dark in here, but it looks dark on the webcam. I'm gonna see if changing the lighting in the room helps. Not really. Let's see if this works. Give me a second. That's most definitely going to brighten up the room at least. I don't know. It doesn't look too bad. I'm going to put on some deodorant. Okay. So it's very. I can't believe I just get generic Links Africa because fuck it. Right. We are going to watch Why Russians Defenses Failed to Stop Ukraine Invasion by William Spaniel. It literally came out 15 minutes ago. So I kind of feel bad for just playing it now because, yeah, it's a little early, but it doesn't matter. I'm gonna play it. It seems interesting. Seems like it's about what happened inside Ukraine just recently. If you don't know, Ukraine recently basically started invading parts of Ukraine's Intel trap. Interesting. Oh, Intel, like they have Intel and stuff. Okay, sorry, I thought we meant Intel as in the wafer company, like the CPU company. No, recently Ukraine has invaded parts of Russia, and now Russia is on state of emergency. It might be more now because, of course, there's latest on the wars coming out a lot more recently. Okay, let's. Oh, before we do that as well, we should probably run mirror. Nope. Nope. Mirror. Okay. Mirror hub. Thank you. And we're going to begin coloring while we listen to this and maybe give some commentary on the way. Before we do, so this is what I'd actually, oh, I don't know if I've shown off this yet. So the animation has a bit of color now. Let me real quick. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so these are some of the colors that we're going for. I'm just gonna where's our drawing? Why isn't it drawing? Oh, is this frame empty? Is that why? Well, this frame does have color, but for some reason, I don't know why that's brown. Okay, that's fine. Let me just fix this real quick. That'll do. That'll do. Right. So I don't know if you can hide an entire. I guess this is a track, so I guess I can do this. And let's group these together. And then let's hide the group. So before it looked like this part of the track. And then it goes to the next scene. And now in color. Fuck, it looks so much better. So we are going to definitely do this in color. It just makes the project even longer. I hope to have this project finished by September. I guess that's the best we can hope for. And then after that, we're going to begin working on what actually matters, which is audio stuff. I'll probably do still drawing on the side. I might even still continue to do drawing on this channel, but drawing isn't going to be this rotoscope style anymore. I'm going to actually try and practice real drawing, like trying to draw, well, when I say real drawing, try drawing animation, or maybe I've kind of been watching a lot of anime lately, so maybe I'll try a little bit of anime kind of stuff, but I doubt that I'll commit to anime. I think I'm much more suited to just drawing simple cartoons. There's actually a really good video on a jumping animation. So yeah, in fact, let me briefly, I'm gonna look this up on my MacBook. That's odd. Not allowed in without typing my details. What was I going to search? So there's a jump animation. I'm more interested in draw faces from any angle. Yeah, okay. I might get into that kind of stuff as well. But anyway, let's watch this while coloring this. Basically, if you want to know what I did or what I'm doing, I'm basically looking at the video and then I take the base colors from this. I just realized it's going to play the audio. So I'm going to take the colors from this. So actually, I'm going to start a new one anyway. So Um, I don't know if it's worth bringing along colors from the same stuff or not. I don't know if hmm. I don't know. I can't spell. Um, so yeah, I don't know if it's worth attempting. I don't know if it's worth attempting to use the same blues and oranges and browns and whatnot. I think regardless, we're going to need to do some sort of thing here. I haven't done the exact same colors that are on here, and the reason for that is because the reason I haven't done the exact same set of colors is because I don't know how to do an eyedropper tool in this. I don't know if the eyedropper tool exists. I tried looking for it, but I couldn't find it. What I might do, actually, is make sure the skin tone is consistent throughout all frames. So if there is skin, I'm going to draw the skin for every single frame. And go from there. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Okay. I haven't got, as you can see, I don't have an exact approach. I kind of just, right now, I'm just winging it because I just want to learn things as I go.
Today's story is one of entrenchments, failed political intelligence, failed surveillance intelligence, and some HIMARS to boot. As Ukraine's Kursk offensive into Russian territory completes its first week, it is becoming clearer that there are serious structural problems with Moscow's preparations for such a gambit. In turn, a natural question to ask is how this could have possibly happened. Now, it is far, far too early to be writing the history books on this one. After all, Ukraine's offensive continues, with blue and yellow soldiers still pushing in new directions, even if at a slower pace. Nevertheless, the signs point to two clear contributing factors that help explain why Russian defenses failed to immediately stop Ukraine's invasion. What we are observing is a significant failure on the part of Russian intelligence. And to make the problem worse for the Kremlin, it is not just one segment of its intelligence apparatus at fault. No, this required the combined failures of what we might call political intelligence, that is, the ability to deduce what your opponents are politically willing or unwilling to do, and surveillance intelligence, that is, the ability to cut through the fog of war and see what is actually happening out there in the world. In short, Russia failed to understand that Ukraine had the political ability to conduct the Kursk offensive, and it failed to observe the actions that might have otherwise mitigated the damage from the first failure. The result is an invasion of Russian territory for the first time since World War II, and the potential for a political crisis in Moscow. But the full story is inevitably a little more complicated. Today's puzzle will have 4 pieces: the constraints on Russian manpower that created the dilemmas that follow, the underlying problems that led to Moscow underestimating Ukraine's political will, how frontline defenses are supposed to work in this type of situation, and how surveillance intelligence failed to allow that system to function as intended. But we begin with the primary constraint that the Kremlin faces: manpower. There seems to be a myth.
So it's funny. I think he's about to say there's supposed to be a myth that Russia has unlimited forces, but the fact is they actually don't. In fact, a big problem in Russia in general is their population. They used to be, you know, Russia is one of the biggest countries ever. In fact, it is the biggest country ever. It's just most of the land isn't used with people on it. I think they still have way more people than. It might even have more people than the US. I might be wrong about that. In fact, I might look that up right now. Let's take a look. How many people in Russia? 2024. Russia population 144 million. Compare that to the USA. Actually, USA might have double population 2024. On the same website, oh, they actually have 3 times the population. Holy shit. I bet most of Russia is basically undefended, because the fact is and like people don't want it, kind of thing, you know, because like it just seems insane to me that Russia has so much land and yet so little people. Most of those people are obviously in the west, or the western side of Russia. The eastern side is way more I think agricultural. I might be wrong. It might not even be agricultural. It might just be tribes. I really don't know. God, that might be a bit offensive to say tribes, but you know. Oh, that frame's missing. How does this keep happening where there's a missing things and frames? No worries. But the big issue is that Russia's been mobilizing lots of people. They've a big thing they did in World War II, for example, was mobilize a lot of people, including Ukrainians, because Russia essentially owned what is the equivalent of Ukraine now at the time, and they just sent barrage of Ukrainians to the border to Germany. And they just got killed. You know, they don't. Their way of warfare is, it doesn't matter how well trained they are. You just send them to the meat grinder, and if you send enough to the meat grinder, then you win. And technically, it's true. If you have twice the men, it doesn't matter if they're trained, as long as they're willing to go to the meat grinder, it's fine. But Russia and most of the world in general has a population problem. You know, we're not, most countries don't have a birth replacement rate, and that's why so many of the Western countries have been replacing them through immigration. But even those African countries are now, when I'm saying African, the reason I mention African is because a lot of Europe has been using African countries to replace them, to replace the rate that we're losing people, like our what you would call a native population. And it's a similar thing with the US, and I think they use a lot of people from Mexico, right? A lot of people from Mexico come over the border, and that keeps the population growing. But at the same rate, people in richer countries are much less likely to have kids than people in poorer countries. But as those countries get more and more rich, and actually, I don't even know if it's richness in general. I just think there's something happening that we're not quite aware of. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't looked into it, but I think there's factors that we're not aware of that is causing the population to slow down throughout the world. China being one of the worst with this, because China, there's fears that, I think China's actually decreased in population for the first time, and there's fears that China will completely go, not completely go, that China will have their population cut in almost in half by 2100, which is insane. But it's a phenomenon that's happening across the world. And with Russia, if they keep sending men into the meat grinder, that means there's less men to have kids with the women, and then you're less likely to have babies in your population. And if that's the case, then you're screwed. So to bring this all together, Russia even though they might be doing well in terms of sending men to the meat grinder, I think the issue is that now, how do you mobilize when there's a lack of population? You know, I don't know why there's a frame here, but there's not a frame there. Whatever. Okay.
That Russia has an unlimited pool of humanity to throw
Exactly.
at the war.
Yep.
But the myth that it is, that belief is misleading. Yes, if this were a fantasy draft, and you had to pick either Ukraine's or Russia's populations without any other considerations, you would be crazy not to go with the Bear team. But executing a war plan requires both the baseline resource and the political will to tap it. And it is the latter that has befuddled Moscow for almost 2 years. September 2022's mobilization was done out of a military emergency, with Ukraine pushing Russian troops out of the Kharkiv region, and Russia well short of the men needed to defend the front line. But the Kremlin received a clear message in the mobilization's aftermath: do it again at the regime's peril. Since a young Vladimir Putin came to power, Russia's implicit social contract has dictated that the politically powerful populations in Moscow and St. Petersburg will be left alone, and, in exchange, the Kremlin could do what it wanted to do with its foreign policy. The special military operation was to continue in that tradition, but mobilization broke it. Those fortunate few with the necessary means fled the country, to places like Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, and Russia's per capita conscription ultimately tilted away from the country's empowered western regions. Indeed, the blowback and response signaled a deeper transition. In the absence of compelled service, Russia shifted to voluntary contracts. Although more politically expedient, the problem with voluntary contracts is that, despite the name, the individuals are not volunteers. You actually have to pay them. And, increasingly, you have to pay them a lot. Now, it is easy to take a casual look at the Russian economy and conclude that the country is undergoing a boom period. After all, GDP was up in 2023 by 3.6%, despite the war. The trouble is that despite is not the right descriptor. Because of is more accurate. To explain what is happening here, and at the risk of sabotaging my viewer retention, we need to talk macroeconomics for a moment. GDP pretends to be the almighty metric of a country's economic health. But what is it really? Well, its formula is consumption plus investment plus net exports plus government spending. How does this work out for Russia? Western sanctions have pounded net exports, but government spending has accelerated to extreme levels to produce everything for the war. Hence, Russian GDP is up, even as better...
Sorry, let me hear this again, sorry.
...the countries Putin came to power. Russia's implicit social contract has dictated that the politically powerful populations in Moscow and St. Petersburg will be left alone, and, in exchange, the Kremlin could do what it wanted to do with its foreign policy. The special...
Sorry, what's the assumption?
Since a young Vladimir Putin came to power, Russia's implicit social contract has dictated that the politically powerful populations in Moscow and St. Petersburg will be left alone, and, in exchange, the Kremlin could do what it wanted to do with its foreign policy.
Right,
the special military operation was to continue in that tradition, but mobilization broke it. Those fortunate few with the necessary means fled the country, to places like Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, and Russia's per capita conscription ultimately tilted away from the country's empowered western regions. Indeed, the blowback and response signaled a deeper transition. In the absence of compelled service, Russia shifted to voluntary contracts. Although more politically expedient, the problem with voluntary contracts is that, despite the name, the individuals are not volunteers. You actually have to pay them. And, increasingly, you have to pay them a lot. Now, it is easy to take a casual look at the Russian economy and conclude that the country is undergoing a boom period.
Yep, they have a higher GDP
GDP was up
than
in
us now at the moment, or
2023
most
by
countries.
3.6%, despite the war. The trouble is that despite is not the right descriptor. Because of is more accurate. To explain what is happening here, and at the risk of sabotaging my viewer retention, we need to talk macroeconomics for a moment. GDP pretends to be the almighty metric of a country's economic health. But what is it really? Well, its formula is consumption plus investment plus net exports plus government spending. How does this work out for Russia?
Right. So I'm gonna make a guess here, and I know it already played, but I didn't listen to it. So investments. Sorry. So is this investments within that the country's having? So if they are big time spending, sorry, big time borrowing or investing into the military, then that's gonna put it up. Net exports, well, they're exporting gas still to China, so net exports is probably down overall still, so that's probably what was fucking it before. And then government spending, which the government's probably spending more than ever at the moment because they're investing into their military, so they're probably borrowing a lot of money.
Western sanctions have pounded net exports, but government spending has accelerated to extreme levels to produce everything for the war. Hence, Russian GDP is up, even as better indicators, like the 9.1% official inflation rate or 18% central bank interest rate, paint a far grimmer picture. Cognizant of this, Ukraine has attempted to hit the highest value targets possible, hammering refineries and attempting to bankrupt the Russian energy industry. Consequently, Moscow has needed to show some judiciousness in its recruiting, despite Russia's dominant population size. Now, that may not last forever, and the Kursk incursion conceivably will change Moscow's calculus. However, at least for almost the last 2 years, the Kremlin has leaned more toward regime survival than maximizing effectiveness in the war. That takes us to the Kremlin's first intelligence failure.
Okay, let me go back real quick. I just want to check.
Its formula is consumption plus investment
Jesus.
plus net exports plus government spending. How does this work out for Russia? Western sanctions have pounded net exports,
Yeah.
but government spending has accelerated to extreme levels to produce everything for the war. Hence, Russian GDP is up, even as better indicators, like the 9.1% official inflation rate or 18% central bank interest rate, paint a far grimmer picture. Cognizant of this,
Oh, Jesus,
Ukraine
okay.
has attempted to hit the highest value targets possible, hammering refineries and attempting to bankrupt the Russian energy industry. Consequently, Moscow has needed to show some judiciousness in its recruiting, despite Russia's dominant population size. Now, that may not last forever, and the Kursk incursion conceivably will change Moscow's calculus. However, at least for almost the last 2 years, the Kremlin has leaned more toward regime survival than maximizing effectiveness in the war. That takes us to the Kremlin's first intelligence failure. Well, more precisely, the first intelligence failure of the current situation. The first intelligence failure occurred back in February 2022, but that is a 40-minute story for another video. Constrained by money, and thus constrained on manpower, the Kremlin still had to decide how to allocate its troops on 2 fronts. First, its offensive in eastern Ukraine, and second, defense along its border. Obviously, the Kremlin wanted to shift as many resources into eastern Ukraine as possible. Yes, in sports, defense may win championships, but over in Russian-occupied Ukraine, it certainly was not going to yield massive territorial gains. Now, why further expansion in Ukraine was a priority for the Kremlin remains an open question. Perhaps Russian strategists calculated that Ukraine was vulnerable there, which may still be the case. To wit, Russia has made steady gains there, even if they have come at an astonishingly high human price. On the other hand, perhaps these gains are more of a political necessity. that the regime will be in danger if it cannot at least cobble together all of the Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast.
Sorry, need to watch this part. This is quite big. Okay.
Constrained by money, and thus constrained on manpower, the Kremlin still had to decide how to allocate its troops on two fronts. First, its offensive in eastern Ukraine, and second, defense along its border. Obviously, the Kremlin wanted to shift as many resources into eastern Ukraine as possible. Yes, in sports, defense may win championships, but over in Russian-occupied Ukraine, it certainly was not going to yield massive territorial gains. Now, why further expansion in Ukraine was a priority for the Kremlin remains an open question. Perhaps Russian strategists calculated that Ukraine was vulnerable there, which may still be the case. To wit, Russia has made steady gains there, even if they have come at an astonishingly high human price. On the other hand, perhaps these gains are more of a political necessity, that the regime will be in danger if it cannot at least cobble together all of the Luhansk and Donetsk Oblasts. Either way, every Russian soldier stationed to the north was one fewer human working toward that goal. Thus, the Kremlin had to ask itself what was the fewest number of soldiers it could place along the border. Answering that required thinking about what the chances were that Ukraine might take such an action. Three pieces of information appeared to be telling in that regard. First is that, for all of the problems that Russia was having with manpower, Ukraine seemed to be having it worse. In contrast to Russia, this was less of a political problem. Basically, everyone in Ukraine is directly affected by the war in some way, and more of a sheer numbers problem. Ukraine's population is less than 30% of Russia's, and the lack of babies following the fall of the Soviet Union was doing it no favors. That all suggested that Ukraine could not try a border incursion without damaging its position along the eastern defensive perimeter. Second was prior raids. Earlier incursions demonstrated that leaving the border completely undefended would be a bad idea. Back to the map. This is Kursk, where the current offensive is. But we need to rewind to May 2023 and head slightly southeast to Belgorod. That month, Russian dissidents staged attacks there, with logistical support from Ukraine. A handful of other similar but smaller incursions also occurred that year. The key point, though, is that the underlying intent in these cases was harassment. The groups wanted to raise their public profiles, and Ukraine was happy to provide support just to irk the Kremlin. At no point were they capable of meaningfully penetrating into Russia, never mind holding territory. They were there to hit easy targets and run away, nothing more. Third, and connected to the second, was U.S. reluctance to support attacks inside of Russia. Washington is a major supplier of Ukrainian arms, but has been reluctant to approve of U.S. weapons use in Russia, and has outright criticized measures like attacking refineries. This reflects concerns in Washington that escalation in this manner invites some type of reaction from Russia. And even putting aside the nuclear rhetoric that the United States might not have believed, this concern was reasonable. Russia was already engaging in lethal covert actions connected to the war. Consequently, think about the Kremlin's perspective here. An outright invasion of Russia, with authentic Ukrainian boots on the ground, would have only frustrated the Biden administration even more, or so it would have seemed. And if Ukraine used American-supplied weapons, well, surely that would have had to have been unacceptable to the White House, right? This, of course, is all speculation regarding an unclear situation. But consider what Russian intelligence would infer from all of this. Would it be safe to leave the border completely undefended? Almost certainly not, given that there were previous incursions. But does border security need to prepare for multiple brigades of Ukrainian soldiers, armed to the hilt with Uncle Sam's party supplies? Sure, it is a possibility.
Sorry, just to make sure we are all on the same page, this isn't with Uncle Sam's quote-unquote supplies, this is with UK suppliers for the most part, I think. I don't know if other European countries have, but the UK has said you could just do with this equipment what you want. Um, Now I don't know if the US is now on board, and I can understand why the US doesn't want to join in and say, yeah, go ahead and do whatever the fuck you want to Russia, because that's really bad for relations. I can understand why the UK, which is my country, has decided to do it though, because um, Russia has like literally poisoned our people, literally, like used nerve agents to poison people here directly in the UK. So I feel like they escalated to that. So yeah, fuck it. Let me just finish this coloring. But yeah, so I guess the big thing is them thinking like, okay, look, they've scouted us before, but they haven't got a big enough army to actually invade parts of our land, so we're not going to do it. That's basically a thought process, it seems.
but not something that you need to bank on. From the perspective of someone on August 1st, 2024, the most likely thing to happen was more of those small raids. Okay, let's pause here for a second and do something weird. I want to work on a puzzle that often vexes my students who are new to game theory. Suppose that to stop a Ukrainian attack, Russia needs 10 troops per kilometer of border to halt a full on invasion, 2 troops per kilometer of border to stop the small raids, and none if nothing is going to happen. To make things easy, you automatically succeed if above the corresponding threshold and automatically fail otherwise. Further, your intelligence organization is telling you that there is a 24% chance that there will be an invasion, a 75% chance that there will be a small raid, and a 1% chance that there will be nothing. Given all of that, how should Russia go about choosing how many to deploy, remembering that each soldier on the border is one fewer fighting in Ukraine? Well, the trap that new students sometimes fall into is averaging out the threat. That is, they want to weigh the number of necessary soldiers by the relative likelihood of each potential threat, and then choose the corresponding.
I'm gonna be honest, 24%. I would put, well, he says like averaging out and all of that kind of stuff. I would say the fact is the loss that could happen, like, I don't know the game theory, okay? I'm not gonna do the maths on this right now, because I just can't think about it right now. But here's the thing, 24% chance, 1 in 4 chance is an incredibly high chance. Frankly, if it was like 10% chance that they could, then it's probably worth defending. But here's the thing, you're also trying to focus on, like he said, every soldier that you keep away from the border is just one soldier less who's actually focusing on invading Ukraine. So I guess it depends on how much you actually value your land overall, which of course you do value your own land. I don't know how much he values the land that he's just lost now to Ukraine compared to Ukraine itself. You know, it might be that it was worth doing it because the amount of land that he gained from taking over parts of Ukraine is worth losing those little parts of Russia. And now that those parts of Russia have been invaded, if he did end the war now and with those parts lost, he could at least say, well, those parts genuinely do belong to Russia because they did before this war. So yeah.
Average. Here, that would be 10 times 0.24 plus 2 times 0.75 plus 0 times 0.01, which works out to be 3.9 soldiers per kilometer. It seems like a reasonable course of action, and it is mathematically literate. But one problem. It is a bad way to work through the strategy. When potential threats fall under distinct categories like these, the average does not matter. What does is whether the next soldier deployed is pivotal to victory. Remember, anything less than 2 stops nothing, and anything between 2 and 10 only stops small raids. When you have 3.9 soldiers per kilometer out there, well, first of all, pity the 1 soldier per kilometer who is missing 10% of his body. But second, you either have 1.9 too many or 6.1 too few. That is, you have more than you need to defeat a raid, but you are still going to lose when facing a large invasion.
Yeah.
And, like I said,
So
it is a common pitfall.
actually, that's a good point. Yeah. So now you're not just losing that war, you're losing... You're also wasting a small raid worth of soldiers, right? So it's a sunk loss if you prepare for a small raid and it turns to invasion. Then you would have been better off just putting no one in there and to use those soldiers to continue the invasion of Ukraine. So maybe that's what happened. I don't know if that's what happened. Or maybe what happened was that they went for the small raid amount and it ended up backfiring. I'm not sure, but it is interesting.
I asked a similar question a couple of days ago, and the plurality of viewers went with the weighted average. Now, everyone who answered 5 is not inherently wrong. In their minds, they may be adding extra conditions, like how having 5 might give them a chance against a large invasion. But choosing it just because it is the weighted average is not a good strategy. And, credit to you guys, many of you figured out exactly why the weighted average is a trap. Now, in practice, whether you should actually send 0, 2, or 10 depends on a bunch of things, like how costly the deployments are, how you value each possible outcome, and whether, in practice, deploying 2 meaningfully impacts your ability to weather the storm against a large invasion. For example, if you do not care at all about what happens on the border, or find soldier deployments to be incredibly expensive, then it is possible to justify 0, even though 99% of the time bad things will happen. On the other hand, if you find a successful invasion to be politically backbreaking, then deploying 10 makes sense, even though 76% of the time it will be overkill. Russia's thinking, it seems, fell in the middle. You could not have raids go uncontested. At the same time, though, full-scale assaults were relatively unlikely, and you really wanted to win in the East. And that is the first half of Russia's failure here. The Kremlin poorly estimated these percentages. It turned out that the United States did not really care that Ukraine was planning its own special military operation, especially after Russia started gaming the system and using its side of the border around Kharkiv as a safe haven from which to conduct an offensive. It also turned out that those earlier raids were outright misleading. Ukraine helped the Russian dissidents because doing so was instrumentally useful, not because Ukraine was unwilling to invade on its own. And it turned out that Ukraine had found a way to spare battle-hardened troops defending the front line. Putting everything together, had the Kremlin received better intelligence, then it could have adjusted these percentages and made the right move. But it failed, and the Kursk incursion began. It was the risk that the Kremlin was willing to run given its poorly formed beliefs, and now it was paying the price. Still, that is only half of the story. The other half is in Russia's execution of its defense. In the earlier riddle, we had black and white outcomes. Either you provided sufficient force to defeat the invaders and won, or you skimped out and lost. In practice, you also need to execute. It is possible for 2 troops per kilometer to help in defeating a larger attacking force, but they need to get lucky and not have their surveillance intelligence completely drop the ball. With that in mind, let's discuss how defense along these lines is supposed to work. Now, I will not focus on how to distribute troops along the line given a fixed number of troops chosen. We covered that in a previous video, so check out that one if you are interested. Rather, I want to focus on the order of operations once an attack occurs. The tension between offense and defense is that the defense gets to shape the environment, but the offense gets to pick the location of the attack. In practice, that means that the defender will have relatively few soldiers at the start of the battle, but they can put them inside of trenches and behind other sorts of obstacles. In contrast, the offense can congregate its forces in one location, but it has to fight through all of those fortifications. Putting all of this together, at the time of the attack, the offense has a brief window of opportunity. A good defense is not stationary. Rather, you want to have a mobile secondary that can respond to the specific locations where strikes may occur. Thus, the clock starts ticking as soon as the offensive begins. The goal for the attacker is to break through the initial defenses before the mobile secondary can provide support. The goal for the defender is to use the environment as a force multiplier, stall for time, and wait for help to arrive. This takes us to Russia's second intelligence failure, not recognizing that a serious offensive was about to commence. Remember, the defender faces a window of vulnerability. However, the length of that window is not set in stone. Rather, it depends on the defender's ability to observe the offensive coming and rapidly redeploy those aforementioned mobilized units to the targeted area. Russian intelligence failed in that task here, despite apparently having all of the puzzle pieces in front of it. Now, answering why it failed is a question that would require an introspective investigation by the Russian government itself. And, as a bit of an aside, another thing worth adding is that Russia's response to the Wagner mutiny back in 2023 was also poor, with the convoy getting halfway to Moscow. That case resulted in turnover near the top of the Russian military, albeit for different reasons, but which nevertheless is fueling speculation.
Honestly, that Wagner, was it the Wagner group or whatever? I guess I never really need to remember it again, but that group really fucked over Russia. Like, I'm surprised that they went, okay, we're going to stop here and accept whatever terms and conditions. I don't know why that is. I assume it's because he, the main guy, I forget his name, but I assume it's because he feared his life, or maybe the life of his family. And maybe he threatened the life of his family and he was just like, look, you're going to die now. But how that's going to happen is that you're going to die after the month or something. Like, there's no way that he was just cool with him being killed right after everything that happened, because he knew that he was going to get killed. It was pretty much standard Russia stuff that he was going to get killed off. And he went on a plane, of all things, as well. Like, it just, I don't know, maybe it's conspiratorial, but I feel like it's too coincidental.
That Chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, may soon lose his job. Yet, at the same time, this is not a chronic problem. Russian troops in Ukraine performed well during Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive, so good luck trying to square that circle. But in the absence of a complete explanation, here are a couple of starting points. First, the aforementioned disbelief that Ukraine would stage a true offensive would have colored how to interpret such reports that troops were amassing. Yes, maybe we are seeing Ukrainian troops there, but there is no way that this is part of an invasion force, right? And besides, there was virtually nothing in the open source intel to verify what was happening, a testament to Ukraine successfully covering its own social media tracks. Second, perhaps the most charitable reading here is that Russia may have assumed that Ukraine was building a defensive force. When Russia began its 2024 Kharkiv offensive, it also placed the 71st Motorized Rifle Regiment across the border from Sumy. There was an expectation that, if Russia intended to further contest a northern front, Sumy would therefore be the next place to do it. In turn, Ukrainian troop movements there could have just suggested a defensive redeployment. Yet, in retrospect, it may have hidden Ukraine's true offensive intent. The result was a woefully inadequate response from Russia. Ukraine immediately capturing border guards as prisoners of war, blue and yellow troops zooming right past the defensive entrenchments intended to stall for time, never mind attrit Ukrainian forces, and Russia seemingly sending inexperienced troops to counter the battle-hardened Ukrainian invaders that were pulled from the east. This last bit has led to significant mistakes by Russia in mounting its response, including HIMARS devastating a Russian column of vehicles. What we are left with is a situation that looks like a combination of the 2022 Kharkiv counteroffensive and the original Battle of Kyiv. It looks like Kharkiv in the sense that a breakdown in Russian defenses is creating a domino effect, and Kyiv in the sense that Russian troops are trying to come forward, but are falling into Ukrainian traps. For now, though, it is the worst of both worlds for Russia. But whether Ukraine can keep up this tempo is a question for the logistics teams, which, for the time being, remains to be answered. What does not remain to be answered is how this video is going to end. Obviously, it is going to mention my books on the war.
Okay. I don't really know what I learned from that, to be honest, other than Russia fucked up. It seems like Russia fucked up big time. And it seems like they, I don't really know what I got from that. I normally like this guy's videos, but I feel like I didn't learn a whole lot from that one. Okay, it's been an hour? Okay, let's see if we can look for one more video on something. And it's Stellaris controversies? Do you want to watch a casual video on that before maybe going to something political by Destiny? There is this debate as well. I see the Stellaris controversy.
Stellaris is 8 years old, and the developers are celebrating this with a season pass for some reason, which in my opinion is a pretty weird thing to do. But you do you, dev team. The custodians were also weird at first, but turned out to be awesome. Anyway, 8 years is a long time. Long enough for weird controversy.
Sorry.
Anyway, 8 team.
What is it?
For some reason, which in my opinion is a pretty weird thing to do. Celebrating this with a season pass for some reason, which in my opinion is a pretty weird thing to do. But you do you, dev team. The custodians were also weird at first, but turned out to be awesome. Anyway, 8 years is a long time. Long enough for weird controversy. Let's talk about some of these weird or controversial things that have happened over the lifetime of the game. Stellaris has...
Oh, over the lifetime?
I'll let that say.
Okay, I didn't know they had a mobile game. Okay. I was about to say I'm fucking off, but...
Wait for a undetermined amount of time, do some side stuff, then upgrade to the next thing. There is a ton of these on the Play Store. Announced back in October of 2019, people flocked to see what this was all about until it was suddenly pulled. Why? Well, let's take a closer look at this picture from the game's tutorial. Yes, those are Scorpion tanks from Halo. This image was apparently directly pulled from Halo concept art over what I would assume to be ArtStation and repurposed as filler in the background of Galaxy Command. Why? I have no idea. Maybe the team forgot to replace some placeholder art, as this was the pre-AI era where you had to find placeholder art from other places. I seriously doubt they went out of their way to take this particular piece of art from an incredibly recognizable sci-fi IP and think by themselves, gee, no one would ever recognize these iconic tanks from one of the best-selling Xbox games. Also, there's USNC written on the side of them. Anyway, this was made aware to the CEO of Paradox Interactive, then verified within the hour, and the game was taken down. After what was described as a content sweep, the game was then relaunched a few months later, but of course all the momentum was killed off due to the initial controversy. Galaxy Command is still available today and apparently has had over 500,000 downloads on Google Play with an average rating of 4.2 out of 5, which is a lot better than the average shovelware that you'd find on that particular platform. I've played some of it, and it's a fascinating little pseudo-Stellaris joyride. Back in March of 2021, we celebrated the announcement of the very first Stellaris board game spin-off called Infinite Legacy, a board game that promised to distill the Stellaris experience and bring it to the tabletop. The idea was apparently so powerful that it blew past its $50,000 goal within 15 minutes and had a million pledged within 24 hours. 3 years later, several slipped release dates and a pledge count of $2.5 million. We still haven't seen this game appear. Supposedly, it's in production with a release later this year. However, the last time I heard anything about delivery, it was supposed to be sometime neither July or August of this year. So, hey, maybe it'll come this year. It was just, delayed by a couple of years. This hasn't stopped a massive amount of discord every single time there's an update on Kickstarter, with people being increasingly frustrated about the lack of visibility on what's going on with the game, any releases of a rulebook, or a variety of other perceived issues. Several creators like myself, Temple and and even Stefan, if you're out there, I miss you, joined forces to back this project and be featured within the game. And to a certain degree, I wish I never had.
Okay, I'm bored.
Patrick Bet David, Joe Rogan. I don't think anybody in the Trump camp is telling him to pick a fight with Joe Rogan. I think he's just doing
there's
it
the
himself.
I mean, you've got the nobody's giving him advice to do that. Absolutely not. If I would have get caught like doing anything like that ever.
MAGA and Trump community, I'm a little bit concerned, and there's a blind spot I want to bring up to you. What benefit do you get from calling out Joe Rogan for complimenting RFK? What benefit? What benefit do you get from saying, I wonder how people are going to boom at the next UFC fight when Joe Rogan walks in? Do you realize who are the only two names that have been constant the last 20 years in the UFC brand? One guy's name is Dana White, who is feared and respected. The other guy's name is Joe Rogan, who is loved, liked, and respected.
Okay, fully admit, I don't know all about UFC or any of that. Wasn't Joe Rogan more popular in the UFC scene like 5 years ago? Does he still do a ton of commentary? I know I've seen him come in and commentate now, but I feel like he's more known as a podcaster now, right? Or I could be totally
Easily.
Sure.
Do you think UFC is going to flip on Joe because he complimented RFK
He still does a lot. He's still very popular. Okay.
on the vaccine position, that he fought Fauci and we wrote
That's pretty cool. I like it when people come from areas and then they still do that shit even if they grow somewhere else. That's nice.
this book? You think they're going to do that? And why would you even call out Joe Rogan when Joe Rogan is friends with Dana and put Dana in a tough spot?
I kind of like Joe Rogan. I don't think he's like the... I wouldn't say I agree with him. And I would say that, like, he's the kind of person that, like, because, for example, was anti-vax and all of that, and I'm happy that he... That's whatever, like, I don't agree with him, and I think it was bad that he was, but, he's got his opinions and whatever. I think he's a good conversationalist. I think that's really the main thing, right? He's good at taking someone's passions and then bringing them out in the best way possible. And that's what I like about him. So yeah. Right.
Have to defend you and Joe.
My favorite conversations from him were probably, he did ones with like Jordan Peterson. I think he did some with Carl Kalinske as well. I think they were pretty good. I mostly I've watched him a lot as well for his opinions on like mushrooms and DMT and all of that kind of stuff, because of course he's a big advocate for those to be legalized and distributed and whatnot, because he thinks it's important for people to experience that. I think he considers it like an access to God to some extent, He's clearly a pretty smart dude as well.
And obviously Dana's he's a pro, he's a boss, he's a street guy, he's dealt with everybody. He's not going to have a problem handling that, but do you think that's the right move? And it gets me to continue
We
thinking.
still clean carpets? Yeah. I got new rugs on all my My kitchen and my computer area looks so cute. I don't think I can show you. Wait, you can kind of see it. Look. Wait. Look. Wait. No. Look at my new area rug. I had to move all my stuff off the floor to put it down. I got Gorilla Grip tape to keep it in the right place on the floor.
this is the difficult part, is when a clear delineation is not made, and Nick Fuentes ultimately makes his way to your dinner table at your private estate.
Oh no. Oh no.
And Nick Fuentes ultimately makes his way to your dinner table at your private estate alongside the likes of Kanye West.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it?
I
Go
would
ahead.
say-
Stand
I would
back
say
and
almost
stand by.
everything I see is from the
That's
left
the one.
wing, not from the right
So
wing.
what are you
If
saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists
Who
and
would
white
you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what.
Perhaps no.
It's insane. It's insane. It's one of the, like, could you imagine if I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Could you imagine if Keir Starmer and they or I'm going to give an American example, Keir Starmer for the left in the UK, or Macron in France, or Kamala Harris or Biden were to say, BLM stand back and stand by. Like, stand by is like I don't know if that was just a slip of the tongue or whatever the fuck, but I doubt it. I doubt it was a slip of the tongue. In fact, that would be way too generous. I think that he meant it as a threat, to be honest. He meant it as like, yep, stick with me. I don't know why I would need to be charitable about it, you know. I'm surprised that there isn't an arm there.
Moment revealed Donald Trump more than that one
Is she in front of a green screen?
right there.
Do you think that Trump actually misspoke there when he said stand back and stand by? I don't think he actually meant stand by, like stay ready for later. When I watch that, I try to be charitable, but it's just such an odd way to up. Because he was already given the words, right? Do you tell them to? Didn't she ask, like, should they stand down or something? Like I think he was. Hold on, let me read.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and
Yeah, so he's already given the script. Do they need to stand down?
not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right
So
wing.
what are you
If
saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists
Who
and
would
right
you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what.
It's such an odd way to fumble that. It's just such an odd way to fumble that.
Honestly, my garden, by the way, you can see in this, like, in the background, there's so many, like, shitty weeds and whatnot. It's so much cleaner now. I know the laundry is terrible, but that's just me. I can't look after myself. I can't do it. I bet a lot of those clothes might... Nah, actually, they're not still going to be there. That'd be insane. But there is definitely a lot of clothes there. How long have I been doing this for? Only an hour since... When was the last time? Before I was like, oh god, it's almost an hour. And now I'm like, it's only an hour.
In support of Donald Trump. Some of those same white supremacists, one of whom dined with Donald Trump at his club at Mar-a-Lago, coming out and declaring war today against his campaign. Nick Fuentes now says Trump isn't living up to the American...
How long has this been off for? Fucking hell. I hate that it crashes.
Is that the whole clip? Well, no, afterwards he goes on to attack the left.
America First values that Fuentes and his band of white supremacists expect.
It's an odd fumble, but a nothing burger. Is it an odd fumble and a nothing burger when Donald Trump is asked to condemn a group that would later be involved in the first breaching of the Capitol grounds that would go on to have its leader and multiple members convicted of seditious conspiracy against the United States? I mean, you realize you guys could only dream of Democrats having a connection this strong to any sort of group like that, right? Can you imagine if Biden was asked to condemn Burisma and Hunter, and Biden was like, here's what I'd say, Jack. Hunter, keep doing business and I'll keep getting them prosecutors. But what we really need to talk about is Kushner, right? Like, no way, bro. You would be losing your mind.
Adding this quote, without serious changes, we're headed for a catastrophic loss.
This is the difficult part, is when a clear delineation is not made and Nick Fuentes ultimately makes his way to your dinner table at your private estate alongside the likes of Kanye West. Suddenly there are some added expectations. And let's be very clear, Nick Fuentes has been a long-time figure calling for Groyper Nation, which is another word for white nationalists. He has called Christian white males the secret sauce of America. He said January 6th did not go far enough. And so in his eyes, Donald Trump, who has been atop the Republican Party for 8-9 years now, there was a higher set of expectations. And Donald Trump, in his view, is not wholly fulfilling them. At the same time, I want to be clear here, Donald Trump, right, just earlier this week, you'll recall who Nick Fuentes went and had dinner with at Mar-a-Lago in 2022. It was the likes of, now known as Ye, Kanye West, who just earlier this week kind of got lost amid everything else here. But Donald Trump said about Kanye West, was specifically saying that he was complicated, but, quote, a really nice guy. Quote, he's got a good heart. And so yet, in a lot of ways, that's still not good enough for a lot of people like Nick Fuentes.
A major sign that Trump isn't a good business/org leader is that he just hires anyone that sucks his dick off. Yeah, I'm so curious about, like, his path to being a billionaire. I'm so curious about that. I want to know, was he just set up for it, or how? How did this happen? Because, yeah, he seems to lack, like, what I would imagine, like, every good quality in a leader, or like even somebody that would be like a businessman. He was a billionaire before The Apprentice, right? People say born with a silver spoon, but his family, he wasn't born as a billionaire. I don't think his dad had a net worth. Was it even in the hundreds of millions? The Apprentice made him $450 million? No shot. Even at 15 seasons, there's no way.
That'd be so much money.
That show is ridiculously popular. Yeah, but like
450 million. 450, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then divide that with 15. That would be 30 million a year. Is that realistic? I don't even know if that's realistic, really. How much does the average billionaire get? Or how much does the average actor get for a movie? How much let's see, like, what's the net worth of Gordon Ramsay? Or maybe even better, no. He's actually good at Lord Sugar. Screw it, let's just go Lord Sugar net worth. 2024. He's got $1 billion. Maybe then, because if the British Apprentice is anything like the American one, then yeah, maybe.
That would just be an absurd amount of money to make for acting. Well, let's see. How much money has Judge Judy made? I think she's like the most well-paid TV person, I think, in all of history, I think. So she has an estimated net worth of $480 million.
I guess you got to remember as well that The Apprentice isn't just a show where you make money within the show, because the whole show is make profit for me, right? But it's also you also get to be a business partner with Trump, right? That's the show. So I don't know, does he make a lot of money because of that? Maybe he got a lucky person within that group and he just happened to have shares within that
I
person.
think she's the most paid person, maybe in all of entertainment ever. What is like Robert Downey Jr.'s net worth? 300 million. Highest paid actors of all time. Who's gonna be number one? It's got to be like, people are saying The Rock. I don't know if The Rock has been in enough movies like that have been that. I wonder, is Leo up there? It's got to be like Marvel people. Let's check.
The Rock's been in a lot of fucking
Keanu
things.
Reeves, Bruce Willis. That's true. Bruce Willis at his height. Ooh, this guy was crushing it. Tom Cruise, Will Smith makes sense. Okay. Oh, and these are also for a single production. God damn. $30 million. Per movie. Or was this for both movies? Even if it was for both, $15 million. $14 million for The Sixth Sense? Holy shit.
And if The Apprentice is the most...
Captain America Civil War, $40 million for Robert Downey Jr. God.
Yeah, and if The Apprentice is the most popular show of all time, still though, what did I calculate it at? Like 30 million per year? It'd still be a lot of money.
Damn. They filmed those at the same time? Oh, okay. Johnny Depp got $35 million for this dog shit movie? I don't even think I watched this. Is this the one with Davy Jones, or is this a different one? This movie grossed $1 billion? Okay, well, yeah, I guess. Jesus. I don't think you understand. Here's the issue, okay? Here's the issue, okay, you plebeian f***s, all right? I don't even know who the director was for the first Pirates movie. Gore Verbinski. Who knows? The thing is that this movie was flawless kino. This movie was so good, okay, that the next two Pirates movies were like, okay. Like, they weren't bad, I guess. But the thing is that this first movie was, like, perfect, okay? This was the Lord of the Rings in one movie for Pirates movies, okay? This was such a good movie. The other, I think, like I watched the Davy Jones one. They're not, like, bad. They're like, okay. They're fine. Maybe even, like, better than average. But this movie was... every scene.
I think I broadly agree. So like with Pirates of the Caribbean, Pirates of the Caribbean is one of my favorite movies of all time. Especially the first one. But they're all fucking amazing. I say that the first three are fucking amazing. The other two, or I don't know, there might have been a third one afterwards, but they suck. But Dead Man's Chest, what is it? Curse of the Black Pearl, Dead Man's Chest, and At World's End. They are really cool movies, in my opinion. I think the first one is like a 10 out of 10 movie, like one of the best movies of all time. The second and third one, the second one is probably... I'd say, here's the thing, the second movie and the third movie separated, it's not that they're not good, it's just, I feel like if you only watch the second movie, you'd be like, what? And if you only watch the third movie, you'd kind of be a bit confused maybe as well. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I think the second and third movie are good. I think they're like 8 out of 10 movies. In fact, I would even be willing to say like, actually, I'd be willing to say that Dead Man's Chest is a 8.5, and then I would say At World's End is an 8. Here's the thing, I've already kind of coloured it. I feel like I might be willing to get rid of the glasses because I kind of coloured it with the pencil anyway. I'm actually getting really tired. I might need to eat. I don't know.
Fuck. We watched that one guy do a huge, like a 45-minute review of it. He goes over everything. Because it's true. Because almost every single scene in this movie is Kino. Almost all of them are Kino. It's such a good movie. This is just Kino, right? And then people see this and then you have like the Davy Jones movie. All the other pirate movies the other two are okay, and then whatever.
You were saying something about Harris?
Yeah. These rallies are pretty
fucking awesome, aren't they, man? 20,000 people in Arizona. He's freaking out. He's in full-blown panic mode. Like, she's beating him in swing states. She's beating him in the national poll. She's kicking his ass fundraising-wise. He's getting shit from Tim Pool, Patrick Bet-David, Joe Rogan. It's not going great, and I love it. Like, I'm happy for the first time in months.
Okay, he did do that rally in Montana, though. Very important.
He did have that. He did have that rally in Montana. And the thing is, just totally unnecessary. I mean, he's almost certainly going to sweep Montana. Somebody said that, or I read somewhere that it's like a political revenge tour, but I wasn't able to like do any deep dive. I don't know if he's like.
I watched a video last night over it, and then I replayed it for stream, but I walked away. Something about he hates like one of the dudes involved, so he went to help like a local official run for his election.
This is going on. Oh, it's an hour long.
Yeah. So the thing is, though, at what point do
I might watch in my own time.
He's an idiot. So like. What's interesting to me is the people who are criticizing him now. So you have Poole and Patrick Bet-David, and there's a guy called like Eric Erickson who's like a quasi-Trump Republican radio host. He's still trying to be as neo-conservative as possible. But when they criticize Trump, it's always like, what are these advisors telling him? Like, who's getting into the Trump war? How about it's just Trump being Trump? I don't think anybody in the Trump camp is telling him to pick a fight with Joe Rogan. I think he's just doing it himself.
I mean, you've got nobody's giving him advice to do that. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Where's that 4chan green text about Trump? It's just that. And it's also the it's also that Nick Fuentes clip. Hold on.
Yeah, Fuentes went off. Yeah, and Laura Loomer. Do you know who Laura Loomer is?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, so she had this like whole like lengthy Twitter thing where she's like, he's gonna lose if he doesn't like get his shit together.
God damn it! I'm not gonna find it. Where is the one? It's like 4 lines long, and it's like, bros, maybe he was just a retard the whole time. I'm not gonna be able to find it. But
yeah, I don't think, did even Fuentes come out and say that? Like, I know Fuentes says he supports Trump, but he's like, I thought he was like picking a fight with Trump's consultants. Like, he's also blaming Trump's advisors instead of Trump.
Sure. I mean, the gripers are unhappy for, I think, a separate reason. But I was referring to there's a really funny Fuentes. It was like a 30 or 40 second thing. Like, I think it was like 6 months ago. He might have been ironic when he was saying it, but all of it was true. But it was something where he was like, like, there is no, people didn't die from the vax. There is no whatever. This didn't happen. Hunter Biden didn't get caught. Nothing is happening or whatever. Does anybody know the clip I'm talking about? Please, somebody find me this clip. I just referenced 2 things that I can't source, and I feel like a loser.
No, I had no idea that he said shit like that. I don't even know what the relationship is between them anymore. I thought somebody said that he was like.
I don't know if they ever had a relationship. I think that Fuentes. I think there's a lot of meme rumored shit that goes around, but it's possible that Fuentes literally got snuck into that dinner by Milo, and he was never really supposed to be there.
I see that. I see the meme thing.
Oh yeah, this was it. Yeah, I don't remember what this was in response to, but yeah. Fuck. Hold on. Was it this clip? Hold on. I'm sending you something else.
Hmm?
Or wait, actually. Oh no, I can't do that. Yeah. Okay, wait. It might have been this.
The vaccinated have not mass died off yet. Israel has not been destroyed. CERN has not opened a portal to hell. Russia's not taken over Ukraine. There is no nuclear war. Hillary Clinton is alive. What the fuck?
Oh no.
Not been destroyed.
Oh no, I can't do that. Yeah. Okay, wait. It might have been this.
The vaccinated have not mass died off yet. Israel has not been destroyed. CERN has not opened a portal to hell. Russia's not taken over Ukraine. There is no nuclear war. Hillary Clinton is alive. What the fuck?
Oh no. I think for the gripers, I think for a big part of Nick, is at his heart. How old is Fuentes? Is he 26 or 27?
I have no
It
idea.
was younger.
What does Groyper mean, by the way? Like, I am so new to this.
Oh, he might be
Is it like
26.
an acronym? Yeah, but is it in like an acronym, or is there like what's the?
I have no
genesis of
idea
the
what it
words?
comes from. I
Weird
just know.
fucking- Okay.
Yeah, he's 25. At his heart, Nick is a young man, like a older boy. He's grown up. He's a young man. He really likes Kanye West. Gripers and the America First movement, they started primarily, I think, as like a meme movement, right? It was like counterculture, like heavily meme driven. They've got like a huge subculture. They're very active in their forum and on their Telegram.
My
and
nose
Twitter
very long
groups,
there.
And they've got
But it
like,
might
a whole,
actually
like,
be that
community.
long.
Like Fuentes is like comparable to me as a streamer, I think, in terms of like how active and engaged this community is. So I think with this in mind, they want to feel like they're hip and cool and at like the front of like the culture movement, the culture wars. And as stupid as it is, I think watching Trump get hit and then kind of become unpopular and like seem a little bit cringe, that's, I think for some groups of people, that's honestly the biggest fear that you have, is that your guy is no longer based in awesome, but cringe and gay. And I think that for Fuentes' movement, I think when they start to see Trump being like kind of cringe, it like hurts a lot, and then they create distance. That's just the feeling that I have. But I think that plays into their thought process quite a bit.
Well, it is interesting how people like engage in revisionist history about Trump's popularity. Piers Morgan does it all the time to your face, by the way, when you're on these panels where he talks about, Trump's popularity. Trump has never been popular. He's lost the popular vote to every Democratic challenger who's ever faced him. And even when he was president, he never cracked 50% in approval. Like, that's the thing. To me, I think it's so important to hammer this home, because when we were in wherever we were earlier this year doing the deep canvassing stuff, where you were there, I can't remember if it was Ohio or Wisconsin or wherever it was, but the conservative girl there, Lauren, she is of the opinion, or she was at the time, she told Adam Mockler and said it to my face, and I was just stunned. I'm like, she thinks Donald Trump is the most popular president in American history, more popular than Barack Obama and other people too. And it's like, no, he never was. Like, Biden, as unpopular as he is now, like for the first 6 or 7 months of his presidency, had a
Is that really true? Trump, I know his approval ratings has never been that high, but then it seems like Trump is very, very popular, at least in the Republican base. Maybe not right now, but it seems like the Republicans are way more unified. I don't know, actually, because Trump's the only Republican I've properly seen in office, so maybe the Republicans are actually... I think the big thing that kind of goes against Trump's campaign, this is the big one, kind of getting a bit distracted on the main topic, but I want to kind of close off everything that I'm talking about with something. I think the big thing that's screwing over Trump is the fact that he's divisive. I know it sounds really stereotypical to say, but I think that a divided country isn't very popular. Someone who is divisive is not very popular, and someone who spreads the message of we want to do more positive things, we want to be a positive America, is a way more fun and a way more interesting for Americans in general. I don't think Americans actually enjoy divisive language and negative language for the most part, even though Trump has been popular has however much popularity he's had for a long time. I don't think people enjoy don't think people enjoy this negativity for long periods of time. You know, this idea that the migrants are coming and they're ruining your lives and they're ruining everyone's lives and Russia's going to kill us and blah, 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 blah. I think America prefers to hear a message like, we are the best country in the world and we will make it through. We will make it. We've made it through the pandemic now, and we need to get through healthcare and help those who are poor and all of that kind of stuff. I think Trump originally ran on positive language to some extent, even though he was a very negative person. He ran on "Let's make America great again," and that was the positive message. While Hillary was running on Russia, 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 right? That was the common meme. And I think when you're running the positive message, it becomes much easier to campaign, but it also gets a lot easier for people to come onto your side. I think people don't enjoy divisive language in general. No, divisive language can exist and it happens, but in general, I don't think Americans really enjoy the divisive language.
50+% approval rating. It was just about the time of the Afghanistan withdrawal that he started to go under. Like, Trump has never been popular, and he's capped. I still think he can win this election.
Maybe
because
just,
of all the
maybe just popular within the Conservative Party, because I think within
now
Republicans,
that's true. Yes,
yeah.
Now that, I mean, no, there's no question there, because they'll gladly forsake all their principles and policy positions for whatever he happens to feel that day. But I heard your conversation with Hutch yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, but I'm not quite as optimistic as that. I still think that Trump can win this election.
Yeah,
that's definitely true. 1,000,000,000,000%. There's no way that you would ever say that Trump is 100% lost. But the path they're on right now is 100% lost. That something has to change, and there are plenty of things that could change, but something has to change. I'm curious where that'll come from. I feel like right now they're looking for something external. But another problem too is now the thing that sucks is, like, externally, I think that Kamala is a bit more insulated from what happens because she's not Biden, right? So if the economy has issues, they can't really attack her on the Afghanistan thing as well as maybe they could for Biden. There's not much that they can go off of, and I don't even know if she would get. They're trying to do the border thing, but I don't know how convincing that.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I saw a poll, I think it was CNBC that had it today, that Kamala right now, Harris has erased Trump's lead on the economy with younger voters, and that's the one area, I think even more than immigration, where Republicans have enjoyed just a colossal polling advantage for like 30 years, right? They're always seen as handling the economy better. And I don't know what it is. I think some of it is because she's a cipher, like you said. She's part of the Biden administration, so she can simultaneously do whenever she wants situationally. She can say, this is the Biden-Harris administration. I can also claim credit or take credit for all the cool shit that Biden did. But then if she wants to separate herself from him, she can do that too. What's interesting is how she'll be able to do that with Gaza, right? Or Israel.
I actually am curious about that. So there's a big thing in America. I guess it would be the same in here in the UK. I just know it more in American politics, I guess, known as the incumbent advantage. So after you've run your first term, the reason that they generally run the same candidate for a second term is because you have what's called an incumbent advantage. So people generally are like, well, the economy seems stable under your leadership, so we might as well just keep you in for another 4 years. And I think for the most part, in the 20th century, the incumbent wins like most of the time, right? Now, that means, and now there are some exceptions to that rule, Trump being one, and really Biden being the other, because Biden dropped out after his terrible performance. So of course, if you're too old, or if you're too divisive, in the case of Trump, then you might end up losing that incumbent advantage. Of course, there's nothing stopping you from running again in the case of Trump. Here's the thing though, with a vice president running, so the incumbent has been Biden, has dropped out, and now Kamala has taken their place. But the weird thing is, Kamala is an incumbent in a way, because she is part of the administration that is of the government that's currently running. So you can kind of think of it as an incumbent advantage because she's like a safe pair of hands. The only reason people are called this incumbent advantage because it's shown to be reliable. That if you're the incumbent, that you have the advantage. In the case of Kamala, she is not really the incumbent, but she kind of is an incumbent. Because she is as vice president in office, and but she can also divide herself from the government if there's anything wrong. She can kind of have her cake and eat it too. So she can say, oh yeah, look how well the Democrats have done, and I'm part of that Democratic group. Look how well the economy's doing at the moment, blah, 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 blah. So she can take all the credit for that, and take more credit than usual because she has that advantage. But she also can separate from Biden whenever she wants to. So if she doesn't agree with the Israel-Palestine war, for example, she says she wants a ceasefire. I know that Biden technically wants a ceasefire as well, but I think that Kamala seems to be more strict on it. So Kamala can say, hey, I'm going to also make sure I do this. So she can kind of have it both ways. I kind of wonder if that could become a trend. Now, the issue is it takes someone who's pretty selfless, like Biden, to drop out of the race like that, you know, because Biden really wanted to stay on. And like someone like Trump, for example, unless he really couldn't run, wouldn't give up his place for a vice president, right? So it's just interesting to think about, like, what is it actually a better advantage to have your vice president run or to have your president run? I think long term it has benefited the Democrats. It seems to have already benefited the Democrats to actually leave the vice president running. And I kind of wonder if that becomes a strategy in the future where vice presidents instead run in place of their own people, because they can do this kind of double whammy of, oh, I'm part of the current government, but also not, you know, I'm part of this current government, but I have my own suggestions that I want to do. I don't know. We'll see.
Because that's not an area that I follow particularly closely, but she's been heckled like in the last two speeches that she gave, even in the Arizona one yesterday. And her response to it yesterday was actually so well received that she was getting kudos. I don't know if Hassan gave her kudos, but I think Vosh did, and Mehdi Hassan and a bunch of others, like, yeah, okay, this is how you respond, where she was like, you know, we got to call for a ceasefire, but basically shut the fuck up. She said it very politely, like, yeah, we're going to call for a ceasefire, we're definitely going to do shit, but I got to get back onto my stump speech. And so I think for her to have responded well enough to, I don't want to say silence her more leftist critics, but to like satisfy them in the moment, I think that's a really good sign. I think that, I don't know, the momentum is stunning. I am kind of surprised, because some people say that this is like Obama 2008 energy, and I was 17 years old at the time and wasn't paying too close attention to politics. Is that how it feels for you? Do you feel like Obama levels of energy from this, or do you think that's an exaggeration?
It's hard for me to say, because back then I was feeling that energy, but it was for Ron Paul, so I was a Ron Paulinite, all right? I was a libertarian stand back then, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, they say the crowds and the energy, but I can't really speak to that, but I'm more optimistic than I was. Getting back to Game of Thrones, I asked you this before.
Game of Thrones.
All right.
I've never watched Game of Thrones.
Let's pretend at the end of season 4, Tyrion does not kill Tywin. Tywin is alive at the end of season 4. Daenerys eventually invades, but if Tywin is still running the country, does she beat Tywin?
No, not even close.
She has 3 dragons, though. What do you say to the dragons?
He would do it. He would figure it out. Tywin is too smart. Do you remember why Oberyn was a judge in the trial?
Yeah, because fucking phenomenal scene where he talks to him in the brothel, and he's like, hey, listen, you and I hate each other, but I need you on my team because the wildlings are here and Stannis is here and all this other shit.
Yeah, and because I think he specifically said to him, when the Targaryens, you know, ruled the skies before dragons, I think that the whatever.
Okay, I've been doing for an hour and a half. I'm going to leave it there. How many frames have we done? We haven't really So we got all of this. And we're just doing the skin tones right now. I don't know why, but my skin's a lot darker than my actual skin tone. My skin tone's actually a lot whiter. Well, I'll just say that's my art style, I don't know. Okay. If it turns out the skin tone's too dark, I can color correct it in post. Right, I am done for now. I will speak soon. Bye bye.